Good morning, all of you. Welcome to you all for today's class. Today we are going to talk about chapter 4 under Advanced Financial Management. And Advanced Financial Management, chapter 4 is talking about cost of capital. Cost of capital and the concept of cost of capital and capital structure. These are the two major topics that we are going to discuss in this chapter 4. Okay, we'll see that. What is cost of capital? What is cost of capital? Because any firm requires money to run their businesses, and many firms require capital to establish their businesses. For procuring that capital, they may go for different sources of finance, like borrowing from bank, borrowing from friends, borrowing through bonds, debentures, and borrowing through issuing the shares. There are many ways to raise the capital, and this cost of capital is about at what cost they are rising, because the cost of capital will influence the returns of the firm. The cost of capital will influence the value of the firm. So like this, what is cost of capital? We'll see that the term cost of capital refers to a minimum rate of return that firms earns on its investment, because whatever the investment you are doing, that investment is done with the capital. That capital has been borrowed from outside. So but when you are borrowing from outside, you need to pay some return. You need to pay some interest for that capital which you borrowed from outside. So for that, at least you need to earn a minimum return on your investment, so that you can pay to the debt holders, you can pay to the shareholders a proper returns to them. That's why minimum rate of return that a firm must earn on its investment. That is one thing. And cost of capital is required rate of return. One more meaning we can say that required rate of return. Required, say you borrowed money, a capital at a cost of 10% per annum, 10% interest you have to pay. So for that, at least you need to earn 10% return on your investment that you invested by borrowing the money. So that's why cost of capital refers the minimum required rate of return on its investment, which belongs to equity, preference, and debt holders. Because uh, we have uh, we have different sources of finance which we borrow: equity and preference in the form of shares, and debt holders in the form of bank loans, bonds, debentures, and all this. From all these sources, whatever you are bringing for them, you need to pay a certain amount of return. That's why that minimum rate of required rate of return must be earned on your investment that you are invested. So how do we measure at what cost you borrowed the money, at what cost you borrowed the money and invested the money? So that's why the measurement of cost of capital, how do we measure the cost of capital which you borrowed? And the calculation of cost of capital can be done in two ways. One is that specific source or individual source of finance, or we can say that by combining, by calculating the weighted average. Weighted average means combination of all the cost of capitals or sources of finance. We can say that this is also called as overall cost of capital. Overall cost of capital, that is KO. Overall cost of capital means combination of all the sources of finance. Cost may be calculated combinedly. So weighted average cost of capital means WACC. There's the weight of all the finance sources that you are bringing to run your businesses. One is that individual source of finance. Individual source of finance or cost of capital, we can say that cost of debt. Debt means which we borrow from a loan, from debentures, from bonds. So for this, we need to pay some interest. Cost of equity, because the real owners capital, it is there in the form of shares. Then the cost of preference shareholders, which they get a fixed rate of dividend. So these two are related to equity. And one more is saying that cost of retained earnings means we'll discuss this later. What is this cost of retained earnings in the coming slide? Cost of debt. What is this cost of debt? Cost of debt is a effective rate that a company pays to its current debts. Means you borrowed a loan, a bank loan from bank at a rate of 10%. so that you need to pay that effective rate to that bank every year or every month. That needs to be done. So this can be measured either by before tax or after tax returns, because interest expense is deductible from the income tax, because whatever the interest that you are paying on a bank loan, that interest is exempted from the income tax. So that's why it can be calculated after tax returns or before tax returns. So this is a part of capital structure. This is a part of a capital structure, because capital structure is a combination of that debt and equity, combination of debt and equity. Debt which we borrow from outside in the form of by paying interest, and equity we borrow in the form of shares by paying the dividend. These are the debt and equity. So cost of debt is a part of the capital structure. So that's why we can say that. And how do we calculate this? Okay, individual source of finance, cost of debt. How do we calculate? Calculation of cost of debt. It can be done. I already told you, cost of before tax or cost of debt after tax. This is what the formula that we use. Cost of debt. Cost of debt before tax, KI. Cost of debt is that KI is equals I by SV, and the cost of debt after tax is that KD is equals KI KI into 1 minus T, or I by SV times 1 minus T. These are the formulas that we calculate to calculate the cost of debt before and after tax. Where KI, what is this KI? KI before tax cost of debt, and KD after tax cost of debt. I is equals annual interest rate. SV is a sale value or debenture value of bond or bank loan cost, and T is equals tax cost. Note that debt may be issued at par, at discount, at premium. Debt at par means as per the market value, at discount means less than the market value, at premium means more than the market value. This is what debt may be raised. Debt may, based on the situation, debt may be raised through par, discount, and premium. We can say that par is equal to, I already told you, equal to market value. Discount is less than the market value. Premium is more than the market value, which they borrow at a different levels of premium and par and discount. So, for example, let's say one example: a company has a 10% debt. 10% means it's a rate of interest. 100,000 they borrowed by issuing the 1,000 debentures. 1,000 debentures at the rate of 100 each. 1,000 in times 100 each means 100,000. That we can say that the tax rate is 35%. Determine the cost of capital before and after tax by assuming at par value. They are assume that they are issuing that par value as per market value, no discount, no premium. So solution is that before tax there is a formula: KI is equals to I by SV, sale value, and I is equals interest. 100,000 10% means 10,000 is the interest. 10,000 is the interest. That is, by sale value is how much? 100,000. That's equal to 0.1 or 10% is the cost of debt at par. Cost of debt at a par, that we can calculate like this. And after tax we can calculate ki into 1 minus t. So what is the ki we got already, 0.1 and 1. And what is the tax rate? 35%. 35% means 0.35. 35 by 100, if we keep 0.35, 1 minus 0.35, that's equals after tax how much you are paying. Because you are getting the tax benefit, you are paying a less interest, that is 6.5, because of tax benefit. Example 2 also given here. Example Q2 also given here. ABC raises the 200,000 by issuing the 200 debentures at the rate of 10%. 10% interest of 100 each. 100 each means 100 times 2,000 debentures means 200,000. So company tax rate is 50%. They are saying what is the cost of debt to the firm after tax and before tax if company issues at a par and 5% discount. Here the two things are given, discount, and at the same time par, they are issuing the company debentures. One is that at par we can say that sale value how much? 100 times each is equals 100 each sale value. I is equals 200,000 into 10% means 20,000 interest rate. T is equals 50%. Before tax KI, formula is I by SV. I means how much interest, 20,000, and SV means sale value 200,000. That's equal 0.1 or 10% is the cost of debt before tax. After tax, tax value is at 0.5. If we calculate after tax, it is 0.5, or we can say that 5%, or 5% we can say that, or we can say that 5% also. So like this, we can calculate at a par cost of debt, and at a discount. If we take at a discount, they are saying that sale value is 200,000, 200,000 minus 5%. 5% discount, sale value, they are issuing at a discount, means 5% discount means 190,000. 190,000. I is equals 20. I is equals interest is equals 20,000, 20,000, and tax is equals 20%, 50%. So before tax, same formula you can apply. 20,000 interest by 90,000, discount is there. After discount 190,000, it may become 10.5%. It may become 10.5% because it is a 10% discount they are giving to the public, so that it is costing more. It is costing more. So that's why at after tax KD, if you take just apply the tax 1 minus tax 0.5, so it is becoming 5.25. It is also more. After tax also it is more, because the discount benefit will go to customers, so that a company pays more interest to them. So cost of preference, one more single source of finance is that cost of preference shares. Preference shares, I already told you, cost of preference is a function dividend expected by preference shareholders. Preference shareholder dividend they may expect by the preference shareholders. Whatever the dividend is expected by the preference shareholders are going to be the cost of to the company, because they are expected 10%, 15% fixed dividends from the company. That's why it is definitely a cost for the company. So preference shareholders paid a regular dividend in case of losses. Preference shareholders are paid regular dividend at a fixed percentage. That's the difference between equity shareholders and preference shareholders. Equity shareholders equal proportion of the profits they may get, because they are real owners of the company. Preference shareholders equal proportion, fixed percentage of dividend they'll get it. So except in case of losses, remaining times they'll get the regular dividend. So it may be the cost for the company. At what cost the dividends are being paid, or at what cost of preference shareholders are being there in the company. So we'll calculate that. If the company is unable to pay the dividend, it affects the value of the firm and fundraising capacity, because if you are not paying dividend regularly, shareholders will not keep with you. They may go away from your company by selling off their shares, and they may go for buying other company shares. So that's why they have to pay regular dividend to the preference shareholders, so that the firm value may not get affected. So that is what one thing. There are two types of preference shareholders, we can say that. What is that? Irredeemable preference shareholders. Preference shareholders means, irredeemable means the shares which cannot be withdrawn, shares which cannot be redeemed unless the company is liquidated. Till the company ends, the shareholders will continue. That is the irredeemable preference shareholders. Redeemable preference shareholders. Redeemable preference shareholders means the shares which are redeemable after a particular period of time. They can withdraw, they can sell their shares to someone. This is what redeemable shares, redeemable preference shares. There are two types of preference shareholders are there. And one more thing, if you see this cost of equity, this is what about current cost of preference shareholders, and the same value will applicable. The same procedure is applicable as per cost of equity to calculate the cost of preference shareholders. And one more thing is that third one, cost of equity. Cost of equity. What is this cost of equity? Cost of equity is the minimum rate of return that a firm must earn on its equity finance proportion. Finance proportion means through shares, whatever the investment they raised through shares, for that shareholders they need to give minimum rate of return, a minimum rate for the preference equity shareholders. That's why, at what cost? So whatever you are giving to the equity shareholders, what is the cost of that equity to your firm? what is the cost of that equity to your firm. For that, we need to calculate cost of equity by taking this formula D by N by P or DPS by NPS. So cost of equity, KE is equal to cost of equity, D is equals expected dividend per share, and NP is the net proceeds of the shares, means sales value, and market price per share. NP is equals market price per share. Market price means how many shares you have, number of shares times into share price, that may equate to market price per share. You may get it that. And example, a company had distributed a dividend of 25 on each equity shares. They have distributed $25 for each shareholders, and each share, the current market price of the equity share is that 60. Current market price, share equity share price is 60. Calculate the cost of equity per dividend yield method. As per the dividend yield method, dividend yield means how much dividend, how much cost you have paid to the shareholders, equity shareholders, out of this 60, that is equity share price is there. And KE, you have the formula, KE is equals DPS by NPS, dividend per share by market price per share. We have on this formula. DPS, dividend per share, how much they have given? 25. Per market share, how much? 60. Market price per share 60. 20 by 60, 0.416 or 41.66%. So how much dividend, how much it is costing for you as per the market share of the company? As per the market share, 41.66% it is costing to you. The cost of equity is costing, that much cost you are paying to the equity shareholders. And one more fourth thing is that cost of retained earnings. Cost of retained earnings means, retained earnings, one of the internal source of finance. Here they have provided a dividend. Yeah, dividend they paid. In this case, cost of retained earnings case, they don't pay the dividend. They don't pay the dividend. Without paying the dividend, the dividend amount is being remained stay with the company. They'll keep the dividend amount with the company for expansion of their business. If they pay dividends to the company, again they have to go for raising the finance and expansion of the business. But without distributing the dividends to the shareholders, the company retains the dividend amount with the company, and that amount may be utilized for expansion of the business. Because if they are expanding to the business, why the shareholders will keep quiet without distributing dividend? The company is not distributing the dividend means, will the shareholders keep quiet? They'll keep quiet because they are expanding the business by utilizing this dividend amount. So when their business is been expanded, returns may be more. When returns are more, share price may be more. When share price is been increasing, shareholders wealth also increases. That's why shareholders will agree for this to retain dividends with the company. So that's why KR is the minimum rate of return expected by the investors. Minimum rate of return expected by the investors. So retained earnings sum is equals because of some shareholders sacrifice, because their shareholders are sacrificing their dividends to the company for expansion of the business. So that's why some of the shareholders are sacrificing their dividends for contributing to the company growth and expansion, not receiving any dividends out of the available profits. That is what cost of retained earnings. Retained earnings means not receiving any dividend out of available profits. Profits may be dividend distribution or retained. Anything is possible. So most of the cases, business will retain their dividends with the company to expand their businesses. If investors are receiving dividends, can invest alternatively. If investors are receiving the dividend, these dividends again they can invest reinvest in another investment, from the which they earn a particular amount of return. But they are using this. They are not taking dividend. They are keeping with the company for expansion of the company, growth of the company. That is why retained earnings are opportunity cost foregone by the investors. This is the opportunity cost, because if they get the dividend, they might have invested this dividend in other investment alternative, so that they may get another return. So that's why retained earnings are the opportunity cost of the dividends foregone by the investors. That's why when they are receiving the dividend, they have to pay the tax for that. Okay, because the dividend, even in Ethiopia also dividends incomes are 10% taxed, for 5% taxation is there on a dividend yielding. So when they are receiving the dividend, they have to pay the tax for that. So that's why, and they have to pay the brokerage commission. Again, if they receive the dividends, and again the dividends wants to invest in another company, then they have to pay some brokerage commission for investment in that alternatives, and other expenses when they are investing in received dividends. So other expenses also may be included, like commission for the brokerage and tax, also tax, like this. So many expenses are included when they are receiving the dividend. Based on this KR, KR is calculated as follows. What is that? Cost of equity, cost of retained earnings can be calculated like this. KR is equals K into 1 minus T into 1 minus B. What is this KR? KR is equals cost of retained earnings. T is equals tax rate. B is equals floating rate or brokerage cost. Because if they take the dividend and if they want to invest in another company, they have to pay some brokerage costs and other floating costs. That's why it is there. So that's why this is a formula to calculate the cost of retained earnings. For example, a firm KE, cost of equity, that is KE means cost of equity is 10%. Previously we calculated a cost of equity. Yes, that cost of equity is 10% and the tax rate is 30%. It is expected that 2% brokerage cost that shareholders will have to pay while investing their dividends in the alternative security. If they receive dividends, then if they want to invest in other alternative, they are paying nearly 2% brokerage commission. So what is the cost of retained earnings for the company? Cost of retained earnings is, if you see this, K is equals 1 minus T into 1 minus B. K, already 10% means 10 by 100 means 0.1%. 1 minus T means tax is 0.3 or 30% into 1 minus B. 1 minus B means 2% brokerage commission is there. With that, if we calculate, cost of retained earnings is equal 6.8%. So like this, we can calculate the cost of retained earnings for that. And these are the individual source of finance that we can calculate on this. And the combination of the all the finance sources, like cost of equity, cost of debt, cost of reference, cost of retained earnings, the combination of all these, you can calculate the weighted average cost of capital or overall cost of capital. We can say that overall cost of capital or weighted average cost of capital. It is a combination of all the finance sources cost we can calculate it at a time. What is weighted average cost of capital? Weighted average cost of capital is a calculation of the firm's cost of capital, in which each category of the capital is proportionately weighted, and weighted average cost of capital is the rate at that company is expected to pay on average of all its security holders to the finance its assets. Because they have to finance these assets, they are using cost of debt, equity, preference, all sources of finance they are using. So what cost they are paying together to the security holders of the company. So like this, sources of capital, all sources, we can say that already we discussed that all four sources are that cost of debt, equity, and preference and retained earnings. And why it matters? Why it matters means it is important for the company to know its weighted average cost of capital as way to gauge the expense of funding further projects. How much cost till now you paying, and future projects, if we borrow further, it may cost more again to the company. So it may be difficult for the company to bear that cost. So that's why the lower the company WSEC, the cheaper it is for a company to fund a new project. If now your weighted average cost of capital is less, means then at a cheaper cost you can fund to new projects. That's why always a WSEC must be lower to the company. Lower WSEC is recommended. A company looking to lower its WSEC may decide to increase its use of cheaper financing sources. WSEC is less means they are using the cheap financing sources. Their interest rates may be less, their equity proportion may be less. So like this, they are using the cheaper financing sources. That's why their WSEC may be less. And calculate WSEC. To calculate WSEC, multiply the cost of each capital component by its proportional weight and take the sum of the results. Take the sum of the results. The method for calculating can be expressed in the following formula. This formula can be used. WSEC is equals to E by V into RE plus D by V into RD into 1 minus TC, where RE is equals cost of equity. RE is equals cost of equity. RD is equals cost of debt, and E is equals market value of the firm's equity. E is equals market value of the firm's equity. D is equals market value of the debt, and V is equals value is equals E plus D, total market value of the financing, debt and equity V, and E by V is equals percentage of the financing that is equity, and D by V is equals percentage of financing that is debt, and TC is equals corporate tax rate. And here one example: assume that a newly formed a corporation ABC needs to raise 1 million in capital so it can buy office buildings, equipment needed to conduct a business. The company issues and sells 6,000 shares of stock at the company issues and sells 6,000 shares. This is debt. 1 million is the debt. Now it is equity. They are selling the shares, 6,000 shares of stock at 100 each. Shareholders expect the return of 6%. They are expecting the shareholders. So one more thing is also there. Corporation ABC sells, and they are selling bonds also to finance this project. Because they required 1 million capital, to buy the office buildings and all. For this 1 million capital, they have raised 6,000 shares at the 100, means 600,000 you got at 6% investment return that they are expecting. And one more thing is it is a debt. One more thing, apart from this shares, they are also selling the bonds, 400 bonds at the rate of 1,000 each. The people who can those purchased bonds expect that 5% return on bonds. They are expecting 5% interest, and market value of the corporate tax is 35%. This is what so this is equity proportion, this is debt proportion, and this is the tax proportion. So the combination of these three calculate the corporation ABC weighted average cost of capital, because they have debt and they have equity also. So let's see this E is equals what is that E that we say that the market value of the firm's equity. What is that equity? Firm's equity 6,000 times into 100, that is 600,000. And one more thing is that 400 bonds into 1,000. Here it is 1,000, it is a mistake, you may make it correct. This is not 4,000, this is 1,000. 400,000, 400 into 1,000. 400 into 1,000 means 400,000. And value combination of these two, E and D, is equals 1 million, because they required 1 million. Combination of these two, they are raising the capital. And RE is equals RE, what we said that RE means cost of equity. Already I told you, cost of equity 6%. They are expecting the shareholders, and 6% on their investment, expected return on their. RD means cost of debt. Cost of debt is at 5%, because bond holders are expecting 5%, and bond may expect 5%. TC is equals 35%. So like this, cost of RE, cost of debt, cost of equity by value. Value means total value, debt plus equity, 1 million they required, into RE, cost of equity, returns of on equity they are expecting 6%. And this is debt, debt by value, D by value, into times the bond holders are expecting debt holders are expecting 5%, into 1 minus 35%, that is total 4.9% cost they are borrowing from market through shares and through bonds. So weighted average cost of capital is at 4.9%. So like this, the corporation ABC weighted average cost of capital is 4.9%. This means For every one beer the corporation ABCC rises from investors, it must pay it to the investors to the 0.0, almost 5%. Yeah, 4.9 means almost 5%. If they are rising 1%, one beer means one beer from outsiders means they have to pay 0.0%, 0.5% means 5% return for that. 5% return for that. Okay. For instance, corporation ABC may issue more bonds instead of stock because it can get finance more cheaply because interest may be less. Interest may be legal because this would increase the proportion of the debt to equity. Yeah, when bonds proportion is more and debt proportion is more compared to the equity. So that, and because of debt is cheaper than equity. When debt is cheaper than equity, then company go ahead for borrowing more debt, more bonds, more debentures, more loans from the outsiders rather than issuing the shares to the shareholders. So the company weighted average cost of capital would be decreased. One something, if you borrow, whether it, if debt is cheap, if you borrow more, then your WACC weighted average cost of capital would also be less. That is what one thing. That is about cost of capital. And now we are going to discuss about the capital structure. Capital structure. Capital. What is this capital structure? Capital structure is that part of the financial structure that represents the long-term sources. Long-term sources. Just now I told you that debt plus equity is equals capital structure. Okay, debt plus equity. So in other words, it refers to the mix of the long-term sources of funds such as debentures, long-term debt, preference shareholders, equity shareholders, including the reserves and surpluses. These are all includes the capital structure of the firm. Okay, the management should determine the cost of capital structure in such a manner that cost of capital of the firm minimum and the value for the shareholders must be maximum. Okay, cost of capital, whatever the amount you are borrowing from outside, that should be less. When you are paying the debt holders less, then more returns to the equity shareholders. That is what the concept. That is what the concept. If debt holders cost is less, then there is a chance for more returns, more dividends to the shareholders, because debt holders are the outside persons, equity shareholders are the inside the persons. If we are paying less interest to the outside holders, then more returns would be available for the shareholders. That is what the meaning of this. And this concept is focused on relationship between capital structure, cost of capital, and value of the firm. Cost of capital structure. Just now I told you, when cost of debt is cheaper, then your weighted average cost of capital must be less. Okay, so the concept of capital structure is depends upon these three aspects: capital structure, cost of capital, and value of the firm. Capital structure is proportion of debt and equity. Just now we discussed that. It's a proportion of debt and equity and preference shareholders. So optimum capital structure. What is that optimum capital structure? An ideal combination of debt and equity. An ideal good proportion of debt and equity where it minimizes the cost of capital and maximizes the firm value. When cost of capital is minimized, then the firm value would be maximized with more returns to the shareholders, and it may increase the market capitalization of the firm by increasing the share value. When we are borrowing the money at lesser cost, you can utilize effectively and their returns may be more when you are paying less cost to the debt holders. So that's why value of the firm is equals market value of the debt plus market value of the equity. Combination of these two determines the value of the firm. These two determine the value of the firm. So that's why there are four capital structure theories to test the relationship between cost of capital and capital structure of the firm. There are four theories which are been developed by Durand. There is one financial author, Durand. Durand, will coming slides I will tell you that. And net income approach, they are discussing, they are saying that there are some arguments relating to this capital structure. In the capital structure, which portion of the finance should be more? Is it a debt portion? Is it a equity portion? There is some arguments and there are some comments. That's why they made some theories based on that debt equity capital structure. So one is that net income approach and net operating income approach, and Modigliani and Miller approach, or approach, or traditional approach. There are four approaches that are there for a capital structure to define the capital structure. These four theories may be used. Traditional approach is nowhere is useful. We are not discussing this traditional approach. We discuss about three approaches. What is that? Net income approach. What net income approach? They developed the theory by assuming that this approach is been given by David Durand. There is here is one author or financial analyst. He has given this theory about this capital structure. According to this approach, capital structure decision is relevant to the value of the firm. Capital structure is relevant to the value of the firm or not. According to NI approach, he is saying that capital structure decision is relevant to the value of the firm. In other words, a change in the capital structure will lead to corresponding change in the overall cost of capital as well as the value of the firm. When there is a change in the capital structure, then as well as there would be a change in the overall cost of capital. Overall cost of capital is a combination of different all financial sources cost. Okay, so as well as value of the firm, they are saying that. Why they are saying that? By assuming that there are no corporate taxes. Their assumption, they're assuming that there are no corporate taxes. Cost of debt is less than the cost of equity. Cost of debt is less than the cost of equity. That is what he is thinking in this approach. And due to change in the leverage means cost debt. Due to change in the leverage, cost of equity and cost of debt do not change. Let's see that under this approach, what they are saying that 100% debt is possible. Under this NI and net income approach, they are saying that 100% debt, you need not to go for equity or issuing the shares. Even 100% you can issue that bonds, debentures, or bank loans. These are the debt possibilities, debt financing sources. So under this approach, 100% debt is possible. He is saying that. What he is saying that when debt is been increased, overall cost of capital is been decreases because they are raising at a cheaper cost, so that value of the firm increases. Because when debt is more, overall cost of capital is less. When overall cost of capital is less, then less payment to the debt holders, more to the firm value, more profits to the firm, so that value of the firm increases. That is what the concept he has given under net income approach. And one more next second approach is that net operating income approach. What is this approach? This theory is diametrically opposite to the net income approach. Net income approach, what it is saying that 100% debt is possible so that firm value increases. But in this net operating income approach, the opposite to the net income approach, NI approach, this tells us that capital structure decision is irrelevant to the cost of capital and the value of the firm. Capital structure is nothing. It is not irrelevant. Whether the cost of capital increases, capital structure, more rate, more equity, no change. That is what he is changing. He is telling that no value has been influenced when debt portion, when equity portion increases or decreases, no change in the value of the firm. That is what he is arguing in this net income operating income approach. Any change in the leverage means debt. Any change in the leverage will not lead to any change in the total value of the firm or shares, as well as overall cost of capital, depending upon the degree of the leverage. So that's what when leverage increases, when debt is increases, debt portion increases, decreases. When equity portion is increases, decreases, there is no change in the value of the firm. That is what he is arguing that. So here we will see that debt, cost of debt increases. When cost of debt increases, cost of equity also increases, because when cost of debt more returns, more interest when you are paying, when you are paying more interest, cost of equity shareholders also expect more returns. So value of the firm is constant. That is what his argument under net operating income approach. And third approach is that Modigliani and Miller approach, or approach. What is this Modigliani and Miller approach, or the third approach? Is saying that levered firm, levered firm means the firm running with the more debt. Unlevered firm means the firm with no debt. no debt. No debt means no borrowing from outside. It's the firm which is running totally with the shareholders' capital, with the shareholders' amount. So the approach argues that KO does not change. Overall, KO means overall cost of capital. The argues that KO does not change with the change in the proportion of the debt or equity or capital structure. There is no change at all. Whether KO, overall cost of capital, change do not change because of changes in debt and equity in the capital structure. Also says that firm value depend upon this capital structure. Firm value is independent on its capital structure. It is independent, not the dependent. So that next one is that employed believes that concept that arbitrage. Firm value is nowhere related to the capital structure. They don't believe the capital structure. But what is this arbitrage? They believe in arbitrage. What is the arbitrage? Why the shareholders are investing in the share market? They want profits. So implies that buying a security in the market where prices are low and selling at prices are high. The simple. They don't bother about capital structure. They don't bother about the debt or equity of the firm. Just the shareholders will buy, they will invest when share price is low, and they'll sell the shares at higher prices. That's enough. They don't bother about cost of debt or cost of equity. They don't bother about the value of the firm. Whether cost of debt increases or decreases, cost of debt or cost of equity increases or decreases, value of the firm value of the firm increases, and overall cost of capital is constant. Overall cost of capital is constant because people do not bother about debt and equity. They bother about the low share prices. They buy at low and sell at high. When your KO, overall cost of capital, is constant, there is no change at all. That is what the concept that we can say that. With this, we have finished cost of capital and capital structure. So with this, we have finished this fourth unit. Thank you so much.